Greetings from Scouse Farm, or welcome back, because I've been away for a while. Not away physically, but I haven't had time to do any videos and the weather hasn't been the best for when I've had a bit of time to do some. So I'm in somewhere I've been wanting to film for a while. It's Hale Village, and it's with thanks to Donna, who works at Childe House. I've not met her, but I spoke to her on the phone, and she gave me information about Childe House, which is a lovely little museum in Allerton. So I'll leave a link to the video I did about Childe House up top here somewhere, and if you haven't seen it, have a look at that. But before I get out into the village, look at this gorgeous lodge house on the way into the Hale Park. So I've just parked up in the park, which is nice and convenient because the roads are quite tight round here, and someone probably lives in here, so I'm not going to get too close. But it says 1876. And you can see it's a gorgeous Gothic revival building. I absolutely love lodge houses and gatehouses, and I would say that's an architectural pigeon on top, but it's not, it's a real one. But because of the shadow, there you go, his head's moved. So yeah, he looks like he was actually stuck there, but when it moved I went, oh no, it's not an ornament. Right, let's get you out. Why am I in Hale Village? Well, I'm not going to walk all the way around it because it's very busy for some reason, and it's just, there's so much to see. It is literally stepping back in time, and I knew nothing about this place, and there's a legend attached to it about what was considered to be the tallest man in the world was from this place. And before I go up to the points that are more relevant to that person in question, I'm going to cross you over by that post box, and then I'll double back on myself, because I just want to show you some of these cottages. It's literally, once you get off the main road towards Speke Airport and turn towards Hale Village, it's like stepping back in time. There's houses and cottages with thatched roofs, which you rarely ever see them unless you're watching some period dramas, or you know, like Midsummer Murders and things, where they film in all of the shires and the Cotswolds and places where there's a lot of, well, thatched buildings. But just look at some of these, and there are thatched ones where I'm going to walk in a minute, so you'll see when I start the story. And the Childe of Hale is why I'm here. As I say, he was supposed to be, or reputed to be, the tallest man in the world in the medieval ages, and I'll give you the full lowdown on the story soon. So I'll just show you another couple of cottages, then spin you around. But yeah, all the way up there, there's so many. It's like you're into open farmland up towards Speke, and then it is literally coming into what is one of the most beautiful places I've seen in Merseyside, and I knew nothing about it. I always knew there was something called Hale Village, but until Donna told me that about this legend, I'd never seen it. I've got no reason to be down this way. It's nowhere near where I live, and it's just, there's another English listed building there. Yeah, fantastic. Keep getting distracted because of the architecture. But yeah, I've got no reason to be down this way because, you know, it's literally, unless you live down here, there's no point coming here, because it's just a dead end when you get into this place. Then you're at the River Mersey. So I'll tell you, if I had a few more pound coins in the bank and a house come up for sale down here, I'd be here in a heartbeat. Absolutely, it's fantastic. But the Childe of Hale, let's get on to the story, and I'll just point you to some of the beautiful buildings as I walk past and tell you the story. But the Childe of Hale is a legend of John Middleton, who was reported to be 9 foot 3 inches tall. Just check the road before I get over. And he was born right here in Hale Village. And what? Look at that. Sorry for getting distracted all the time. Yeah, he was born here in Hale Village in 1578, and legend has it that by the age of just 20 he was already 9 foot 3 inches tall, and he was already famous in Hale. But then word started getting out about this giant who lived in Merseyside, and he was known as the Childe of Hale because he had a gentle giant nature, so he was befriended by all the kids. So I've got a theory as to why he had the gentle giant nature, and I'll save that to the end. But for the purposes of the legend, he was said to have had to have slept with his feet out of his bedroom windows in the cottage. And if I looked on the map correctly, I think we're going to walk past that cottage. So well, I'll obviously stop and let you have a little peep at that. And it's nice to be at this point of Hale Village because here's the pub named after him. So in medieval English, where it had an E on the end of child, that's the pub where I am now, the Childe of Hale. It's nice and sunny today, so the sun's always in my eyes, but and if you do want to come and visit, that pub is an actual pub that's still open, so it sells food and drink, so you can stop off here if you ever come and visit Hale Village. So yeah, he was said to have slept with his feet out of the window, and the lord of the manor of this area was known as Sir Gilbert Ireland, and he decided to employ John as his personal bodyguard in 1604, and that's because obviously he was a massive individual, and the lord of the manor thought it'd be a good idea to have him to protect him. For that monkey puzzle tree there, it's massive. There's another one there. It's a delightful little day out for me, this. And Sir Gilbert Ireland, the lord of the manor, he had him performing feats of strength for his friends, so he was sort of treating him like a circus animal, in my view anyway. Just saying, oh, look at this, look at the size of this fella, look what he can do. And he used to make him do all sorts of, like, lift up hay bales and, you know, wrestle people, all sorts of stuff like that. And in 1617, none other than King James I invited Sir Gilbert, because as I mentioned before, word spread far and wide about this giant of Hale, and King James I invited, or probably ordered, Sir Gilbert and John to go to London and challenge the royal wrestling champion. And he was adorned, John, in like a striking, very colourful suit that Sir Gilbert had made for him for the journey. So it was to like a lot of fanfare that he left Hale and set off on his journey towards London to wrestle the royal champion. Just look again at some of these old buildings, and I'll show you this. I have pointed it out before, but you can see I love these retaining straps that you see. So when you're walking around, especially in old like mill areas and things, you'll see, usually in an X formation, you'll see these metal iron retainers with a nut and bolt through the middle. So you get the nut and bolt there, and that goes all the way through to the other side, and it just stops the building flexing. And I love them, the great architectural features. And as I mentioned before about the cottage, that one in the background with the thatched roof, that is supposedly was John Middleton's home when he lived in this way. And that, going back to the story about when he was travelling to London in that strikingly colourful suit, a portrait of him in that suit hangs in Speke Hall today. So if you ever do visit Speke Hall, there's a portrait to John Middleton on the wall, and it's supposedly a massive portrait. And let's go and have a look at his old house. And when he did get to London and settled in and had his little fight with the champion, he did defeat the royal champion, so he was then well, he would have been the champion himself, but for an unfortunate instance where King James and his courtiers placed heavy bets on the royal champion beating what was known as the peasant from the north. And when the royal champion got beat, he snapped his thumb as well, so he couldn't fight for a long time, the royal champion. So John actually snapped his thumb when he threw him on the floor, and the king was not best pleased with this. So they were, how do you say, encouraged to leave London immediately. And Sir Gilbert and John then made their way home, but stopped off in Oxford via Brasenose College, where Sir Gilbert had been a student in his younger days. And they stayed for a few days, and while there, John, they made handprints, life-size handprints of John, and they still hang today in Brasenose College, Oxford, which and are supposedly like ridiculously massive hands, which can completely. A friend of mine said he heard the story that the size of his hands could go over the top of a barrel, so like the old farmers' barrels, or maybe like in your mind just think of a wine barrel, but his hand could span the entire top section of that, which is just ridiculous to think of. But yeah, then John, after a few days, John set off alone because Sir Gilbert was staying in Oxford for a bit, so he wanted to get back up home, and he got sent on his way with his money, because when he won that fight against the world champion, he earned 20 guineas, which was a massive amount of money for a peasant at the time, and it could have literally been his pension. And he then set off alone with his winnings, and met up with some fellow travellers who he thought would be friendly fellow travellers, but unfortunately they beat him up. So they battered him, stole his money, and took loads of his clothes, and he ended up having to take the rest of the journey all alone. Oh no, not a barking dog. The enemy. Look at that. I'll be a bit quiet, someone probably lives in here. Thatched roof. Ta-da! John Middleton, 1578, 1623, 9 foot 3 inches tall, known as the Childe of Hale, lived here. And the dog isn't happy about me saying that. Look at the buildings. So good, so beautiful. Didn't think it'd be this busy, but we are early in the morning. And there's the Vine Cottage, whatever that is, and that's from 1858. I'll just get off the road. So when he did get home, he was obviously a lot poorer than when he left, because he had all of his money stolen from him. And he was welcomed back home to a hero's welcome, because the people of Hale loved him. So the kids were made up to see him back home. And I'll just show you these like bungalows with thatched roofs on them. Oh my God, it's amazing. And unfortunately, and this is going to lead into a little bit of medieval exploitation. Unfortunately, when he did get back home, Sir Gilbert followed him, I don't know how long later, but when he come back up from Oxford, and when he got back, he learned of what had happened, and he gave him no compensation whatsoever. And that would make me question his motives of taking him down to to fight the royal champion anyway. He was probably doing it to just curry favour with the king at the time, and just exploiting John because of his abnormal size and strength. But instead, when he got him back, he employed him as a farmhand, and basically kept him on the farm until his dying day. And it was quoted, and I quote, at the time it was written down, that he was obliged to follow the plough to his dying day. And sadly, the beating he sustained and the subsequent heavy work he had to do for the rest of his days resulted in John passing away in 1623, aged only 45 years. And John is laid to rest in the burial ground of St Mary's Church, which you'll see very soon because it's round the corner. And a statue to him stands proud and tall on the green outside the former manor house of Sir Gilbert. And this statue was designed by Diane Gorvin and was placed there in April 2013, and it replaced a previous wooden structure that was a little bit further up, which it just rotted and then started being dangerous basically. So they took that down and replaced it with a proper bronze statue. And we've got a commemoration to the passing of Queen Elizabeth II here, and outside the front of the manor house, and some fantastic characterful trees all over the place, which are probably, some of them are probably ancient trees as well, because this used to be a woodland area. I'll take you to the statue now. But apparently there are two life-size representations of his hands in Brasenose College, Oxford, as I mentioned before. And there's also a mock-up of the cottage that he used to sleep in, that you've just seen, with his feet sticking out of the window, and that's in the grounds of Speke Hall. So they've made like a little funny cottage with 2 artificial feet sticking out of a window. So if you've ever been to Speke Hall, I've not been in for years, since I was a kid, but I will get in there at some point, and I'll go and look for that, along with the portrait of him that hangs on the wall in Speke Hall, I should say. And I'll show you the statue now as we walk past the manor house, and then I'll tell you about what I believe was the condition that John suffered with to make him so abnormally massive. And that's the manor house, and here we have our John. This is brilliant. Just trying to give you tease you into it, because I think it's 9'6", but he was 9'3", but I think this statue is 9'6". I might have read it wrong, but if this is like very close representation of the reported height of John himself. And I know there's nothing there for reference, there's no one else standing next to it, but if I go across the other side of the road, you should see the scale of the fella. So even if he was close to being this tall, it's staggering, isn't it? Look at me, just look at it, next to a hedge there with a manor house in the background. That is ridiculously tall. And I'm going to walk you around now and show you the burial place. So I think the church is round here. If I looked on the map, yeah, it's there. I can see the tower. But my theory now, I've listed the history. I mean, there are people who've suggested that he wasn't that tall. There's some records in Victorian archives suggesting that he might have been like in the high 7 feet. But there's other sort of forensic, I don't know, analysis, basically using the handprints that were hanging down in Brasenose College, Oxford. So they've taken the size of the hands, measured them, and then come up with a best guess, basically using whatever they class as modern science to determine the height of the individual. And they said yes, it's likely that whoever owned those hands was around 9 foot, over 9 feet tall, and that's just bizarre. But it is common in certain places for people to have what was known as gigantism, and it's called acromegaly is the proper name for it, and it is an excess release of human growth hormone from the pituitary gland, and it causes, in a lot of people, you start noticing it where people have like really big hands, disproportionately big hands, big feet, and the jaw starts stretching, so you have like a massive face. And for those who are old enough or fans of James Bond, you've got Moonraker, James Bond, one of the films. The character was called Jaws, literally called Jaws, and Jaws suffered from acromegaly, and you can tell by the size of him. You just have to watch that film and you see the disproportionate bone structure around his face. And you know, more recently, for anyone who's a boxing fan, you'll know of Nikolai Valuev, who was the heavyweight world champion from Russia. I think he stopped boxing in about 2009, or at least he got beat by David Hay around that time and lost his WBA championship. But he was just touching 7 feet tall. From looking into, I knew about this beforehand, because just from different bits of research I've done in the past, but I knew that like a lot of people who are 7 foot plus are suffering from some form of acromegaly, or likely to have at least an excess release of growth hormone to get that tall. So sometimes it's genetic, sometimes, I don't know what it says on this plaque, but I'm going to go and have a look. Sometimes it's genetic, but sometimes it's the result of a tumour. So you can have an enlarged pituitary, I can't even say that properly, pituitary tumour, and it will cause an excess release of growth hormone. Master Robert Molyneux, a seaman who accompanied Lieutenant James Cook on the first of his 3 voyages of discovery to Australia and New Zealand. So he was a master of the Royal Navy research ship Endeavour. Well, I didn't know that. I've learned something today as well. That's brilliant. So he's from Hale, and he was on the original voyages to discover what is now modern day Australia and New Zealand. And say hello to Fifi if she's watching. She's a subscriber who lives out in Australia now, and she moved out there many moons ago and still watches my videos, which is beautiful. We quite like that. And there is the church, and I'm going to take you in now and I'll show you where John rests for the rest of eternity. And again, I just cannot believe how beautiful this village is, and I knew nothing about it. And when I asked my mate, I said, have you heard about the Hale, the Childe Of Hale? He went, yeah. And loads of people I've spoke to know about this, and I knew absolutely nothing about it until I spoke to Donna from Sudley House when I called up to ask about going to film around that museum. Let's get in here. I nearly had to duck then, and I'm only 5'11", so now we're talking about the size of people. I don't think John would have enjoyed coming in and out of that gate. This is fantastic. You can see the top of the Mersey Gateway Bridge in the background. Don't know if it shows up on camera, but over there is the top of the bridge, and then you've got the power stations there. Oh, I didn't know people did that. People put coins in, which is a nice touch. Let's go around and see if we can read it. So I think this has some form of protection listed status or something, but this is where our John lies. Hale Village, birthplace of what was reputed to be the tallest man that's ever lived. Born 1578, died 1623, and is still remembered in 2025. So rest in peace, John, and thank you all very much for watching. Have yourselves a great day. And if you are in the area or live close by, I really do recommend popping down to Hale Village to see how just staggeringly beautiful it is. So again, thank you all very much for watching on the Scouse Farm. We'll see you all again soon.